A pleasure to meet all at last, and here we are once again with HJN Season 5. So with a few animals that I've talked about lately, I got many more worth covering on. So 2783 is up next, and what I have here for today are the wolves. So opossum, pine marten, jackal, and now wolf. So might as well get into it, right? So wolves are undoubtedly the most popular species of the Canis species in the animal kingdom. So out of all the species derived from the Canis, the wolf is seen as a legendary figure of all places throughout the world. And I'm not joking by saying that the United States and Canada are not the only places to ever have wolves. There's a lot of parts in Europe, Asia, and some other areas throughout the world that are also known to have their own wolf species. Sometimes in a way it's more exclusive to these areas. Even though there has been some exportation of certain wolf species, mainly for educational purposes. Like if you've dropped by certain zoos or certain places that will keep animals around, enclosures or encampments or farms even, then well, you might find certain wolf species that are either endangered or possibly seen as rare. So you could say that the wolf has a lot of diversity in terms of the many subspecies that are around and are existent. But when it comes to wolves that many people talk about, they're the gray wolves, the timber wolves, and of course, the Arctic wolves. There's also the black wolves, which are not necessarily as common, but you still can find them, in a way. But in all seriousness though, we know that wolves are seen as pack hunters, the modern day equivalent to what some ancient species used to thrive from within. Because pack hunting was a unique pattern and a unique challenge. If anybody ever wanted to hunt a wolf, then well, do be wary, there may be other members in its pack. There's never always one out there. There could always be more from when you least expect it. Either way though, there's probably lots more for me to say about the wolf than the jackal or many other species of the Canis entirely. Canis lupus, as its scientific name is for the wolf, is quite a unique breed worth talking about here. And I'm not kidding by saying that, like some other Canis species out there, the wolf has seen its way into civilian households. Probably the most famous would have to be with Bob and the Wolf Dogs, where a wolf known as Honey thrives from within. And in spite of her incredible domestication and friendliness towards people, especially her owners, it's certainly without a doubt that wolves are just as aggressive as some other species out there. Again, they are a bit territorial, and being that they're pack hunters, there might be times in which that they'll howl into the air, much like they do in a lot of ways. It's a natural instinct that wolves can howl in many different ways. But while it might be done at the moon, or it might be done just because, it doesn't always matter though. It's always worth noting that whenever one howls, it's a beautiful sound worth hearing. And sometimes it gets contagious to some of us humans. But by all accounts, nobody needs to take howling as a sign of peace from these guys, because wolves are undoubtedly pretty strong and fierce creatures out there, especially in the wild. In forested areas, mountainous areas, snowy areas for the most part, that's where wolves are usually known to thrive, as their coats are pretty thick, and you don't necessarily see them out and about in the summer for that particular reason. Also because the wild is known to have a lot of other animals out there, including bears, including some birds like eagles and hawks, and some rodents out there, mouses and chipmunks. What I will say about the wolf though is that the more positive side of things, apart from them having some domestication, if you're able to dial in right, finding some of the wild might be a different story. But I guess one other big thing to say about the wolf is that there's a lot of pop culture based around them. If you're ever familiar with certain films like Old Yeller or Air Buddies, in which case a wolf does pop out at one point, But hey, you gotta hand it to Rosebud, who was able to show her bravery. That was quite a scene. Showing domestic dogs are not much different than wolves. But that list is pretty huge, because pop culture revolving around wolves is gigantic. Otherwise, the many other things about wolves is that the biggest nightmare most people will find about them is that they can be ravenous because of the condition known as rabies. A virus itself that has been known to plague most dogs and canis species, especially after being passed down from rodents like bats and mouses. Yeah. If you're ever familiar with that disease, it's terrifying enough as it is. Going into certain innocent creatures out there is a different story, and being transmitted to people is really something. But at the end of the day, while I might have lots more to say about the wolf, I feel like it's reasonable enough to only go with the information that I put out there. Not to mention because I feel like sometimes these HJN episodes will become a little too long as a result of me sticking around too long trying to figure out what other things to say and all that stuff. So we'll pretty much just leave this as is. However, if you want to see more go down to my channel, then I will have plenty more animals worth talking about. So make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.